Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. So today I am going to be drawing and painting this very cute panda and he's eating what looks like palm fronds or something. He's eating oh no, it's bamboo. He's eating bamboo. So I thought I would draw this picture because it made me smile. And I'm going to start by drawing a circle because he's basically a big round fuzzy circle. So I just start by drawing the outline of his head. Obviously the leaves are sort of in the middle. And I'll add his shoulders coming down onto the bottom of the page. I'm not going to worry too much about detail there. Now for his ears, he's got quite big ears on the sides of his head. So I'm going to draw those on. I can adjust and readjust if I need to. So draw those on there like that. Then that one's sort of facing to the back. I got this picture off Unsplash, which is a royalty-free reference site. So you're allowed to use these photos for your artwork. So now I'm going to draw the patches on his eyes, just to get a rough shape of where they're actually wider apart than I've got them. I'm going to make that one a bit wider apart. So his ears are the same height as the patches on his eyes, and also the width of the gap between his eyes to his nose. So that's helping me get a measurement. So also his ears, the length from his ears is from the bottom of his patches to his nose. So his nose comes down to about there. And he's got a very triangular nose that comes to the bottom of both of the patches, or his eyes, which are in here. I'll just draw his little eyes in. Actually, I've got to do them down lower on his face, a little bit lower. I can adjust and readjust. So draw his little eyes in like that. And then he's got his nose comes out and the corners of his eyes come to the edge of his nose. So that's right, that's right. Then he's got a little bit of a curled around the side of his nose. A little bit of fur comes around there like that. And you can just see these leaves out of his mouth. So I'm going to draw the leaves in like that. So I like this picture. It was sort of cute. You can see one of his teeth there. He's got a tooth there. And then you can see his bottom teeth. So I'll draw those in, and they are up to the holes in his nostrils. So he's got one tooth in line there. And he's got another tooth in line with the edge of that nostril. Like that. And then he's got like 4 little teeth in the middle. So I'll pop those in. I've actually got to have them on more of an angle. So angle those teeth. And then he's got a fuzzy chin. So we'll give him his fuzzy chin, like that. And we'll draw in these other leaves. So you can see he's basically just a circle with other shapes. And he's got the stem of his bamboo coming out that side. So we'll draw that, like that. It's quite a thick stem. There's 3 or 4 or 5 of these little these leaves. So I'll draw those in as well. And they're bent down and around like that. Doesn't have to be exactly the same as the photo, just as long as they're in there. And now I can start to adjust and readjust little bits here and there. So I'm going to take a little bit of this roundness off that edge. I'm just going to flatten that out a little bit. And he's got little eyes, like his eyes aren't very big. I can see his pupil there. And I can see the pupil in that eye, and I'll leave the reflection onto the highlight, which will be just the white of the paper. He's got like whiskers here. I've got to erase these lines that I've got in here. So erase those lines like that. Make him a little bit round at this side. You can see I'm going to fuzzy up the outside line of his face. Make him a bit furrier looking. And I've got to bring that fur down to his chin, I'll fairy up this line. I want the lines to be soft around the edges. I don't want hard, sort of flat lines. And then I'm going to draw his back so it comes out there a little bit. Like that. And I'm pretty happy with that drawing. So I'm just going to leave his chest a bit just like that. So you can just suggest that his little arms are going down, well, not little arms, his big arms are going down the left, that side there. And I've got to fuzzy up the edges of his ears because I haven't fuzzied up his ears. So I'm just jaggeding up the lines so that he looks a bit softer, because I have got him looking quite hard lined where I put the original circle. So I'm just going to draw in little squiggles and squibbles, and fair up the ears. And we are just about done with the shape and the drawing. So all I have to do now is go in with a little bit of colour. So I'm going to use my Sennelier watercolours, and I'm going to go straight in. I'm going to make a grey up for around his eyes. So I've got my cloth, I've got my paints all set up and ready to go next to me. Move my palette in right here so you can see the colours I'm mixing. And I'm going to make a grey with cobalt blue and burnt umber. And I'm just going to put it into that little well there. Cobalt blue, burnt umber to start off, and very diluted. And I'm just going to go in with that grey, and I'm going to fill in around his eyes where you can see he's got the darker patches of fur. I'm just going to fill in his darker patches first, and I'm going to make it a bit jaggedy, jiggle up the lines a little bit. So I'm going to just continue around and fill in these darker spots. And I apologise for the background noise. We've got the washing machine going. We've got my daughter playing a computer game in the lounge room. And yeah, I'm hoping you can't hear it. If you can, I apologise. So I'm just popping the dark tones around the eyes. I'll add some brown to this as well as I get to it, because he's a little bit dirty. He's got sort of dirt around his little face. And I'm going to pop this grey, this same grey, on his nose. I might actually also take it around the bottom lip. So I'm just going to block this in like that. Take it down onto the bottom lip, because you can see he's got quite a dark grey bottom lip. Like that. And I'm also going to put that onto his ears, and I can go over this a couple of times in a couple of layers. So black out those ears, and the white of his fur is going to be the white of the paper. Just come up and around the edges there, like that. So, and I'll block in his body as well. So I'm just going to use a very diluted, you can see he's got a bit of black or grey down there. And I'm just using a very diluted mixture of exactly the same grey out of my palette. Any excess water, I can just clean my brush and absorb that back up. Just take the moisture off my brush. And I'm just going to come down underneath this petal, or this leaf. Drag it all the way around. Possibly need to make a little bit more, but I can do that because it's just cobalt blue. It's an easy enough colour to make. Cobalt blue and burnt umber. I'll leave a little bit of light on his chest because he does have sort of a light colour on his chest. You can see he's got sort of 2 strips of grey hair. So I'll just continue around with what's left of this grey on my palette. Like that. And I'll mix up some more. So cobalt blue. Just clean my brush. Cobalt blue. Burnt umber. Mix that together. A little bit less water this time, a little bit more pigment. Bit more, I'm going to make a bit more burnt umber, a bit more cobalt blue. There we go. And now I'm going to go back in everywhere I've just been and add another little layer just to the insides. I'm going to come down and around this eye, around the bottom of this eye as well. Anywhere I can see that's slightly darker. And I can really darken up these ears. I'll bejaggedy the edges. I want the edges to look soft. And you can see it's a bluey grey. It makes a lovely bluey grey, which I really, really like. So you don't have to buy a ready-made grey. I think mixing it yourself does. I do use ready-made like Payne's grey and things like that. And in some cases it's easier. But you can make them yourself really simply. I'm going to wet my brush and actually drag that blue or that grey that I've just made a little bit more around the rest of that patch on that eye and to the edge like that. And I'll do the same on this eye. Come around and just continue on around, filling in around the eye into that patch and down to the bottom. And I'm following the direction of the fur. Always follow the direction of the fur. It really helps to make things look correct. Again, I'm going to go over the fur on his body now. Again, adding some darker tones in, so I've got to mix up a little bit more. A lot less water, a lot more pigment. Cobalt blue, burnt umber, a bit more cobalt blue in that. Make it a bit, you can see that's much a thicker consistency. And I'm going to take that around this bottom part of his fur on his shoulder. Take that around there. You can see that's, I've actually got a bit more brown in there. It's a bit darker, a bit less blue, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. It keeps it interesting. I can also drop a little bit of that in around his eyes and into the bottoms of his ears, and that'll help to unify all the different types of grey and brown. Come down here under this leaf. Oops, doesn't matter. I can change the shape of that leaf a little bit. And I'll continue on down around that leaf. And the white of the fur is the white of the paper, so that's actually makes it a lot easier. Like it's a fun thing about watercolour is to use the paper to help you. You really can do that. So come down and around here. I'll leave the grey patches like that. And I'm going to go on to, I'm going to make up another little batch of that burnt umber cobalt blue for his nose, because I need to darken up his little nose, and then I'm going to pop his pupils in. So I'm going to darken up just the tip of his nose. You can see I've got a lot of brown in that. Got to get a bit more blue to that. There we go. And go over that again. Whoops-a-days. Using the tip of my brush to really darken up his nose. Come around that nostril. Around that nostril like that, and then come down. You can see that his nose comes down to his lip, and in his mouth is really dark, but I'm going to use like a purple tone, a deep purple tone. I think I'll just add a bit more dark down under his lip there, and I'm going to go into his pupil. Whoops. Use the very tip of my brush. So it's very tip of my brush onto the pupil. And I'll leave a little snip of light at the top because I want that to be the reflection of light as the white of the paper. I've got to let that dry a little bit. And we can go on to the little tan areas that he's got around his face. So I'm going to clean my brush, wet it, and I'm going to use a bit of gold ochre, but I'm going to dilute it. So I'm going to pop damp brush around here, anywhere I'm going to put the gold ochre. And I'm going to pop just a little sliver of gold ochre, and I'll drag that around in that water puddle. There we go. Just to, because you can see he's got dirty fur. And I'm just going to soften those edges a little bit. And again, I'll wet my brush. I come around the bottom part of his face. You can see that he's got quite dirty fur down there as well. Going up to the leaf. I can actually do this on both sides now. And it goes almost to the edge of his face on that side. And again, just being careful to follow the direction of the fur when I drop the paint in. If I'm making any brush strokes, you've got to follow the direction of the fur. So I'll get a bit of that gold ochre up the top, like that. And I'm going to drop it in little stripes in the directions of the fur, like that. Coming around that little leaf. Around that leaf, the stem, around that cheek. Okay. And he's got a blue, like I'm going to add cobalt blue, very diluted cobalt blue, onto the grey area, the lighter, the shadow areas on his white fur to make the shadow tones on here. So literally, I'm just tinting the paper a fraction with this light blue, with cobalt blue. Again, going in the direction of the, whoops, a bit too much. Take the moisture off my brush and absorb that excess water up like that. Again, anywhere I see that he's got shadowy fur, you can see he's got a little swirl of fur on his nose. So I pop that in, just about there. And then he's got quite shadowy grey fur on the top of his nose, like that. I can also use this because you can see coming around the edge of that browny area. I'll pop a bit of that underneath his chin. Oops, like that. Okay. And I'm going to go back into this grey that I've pre-mixed, and I'm going to add, resting my finger on the paper, the little grey whiskers around his nose because he's got lots of little grey fur. It's not solid grey around his nose. You can see the white as well, like that. Down and around. And his teeth aren't quite white. They've got a little bit of a naturally colour, like a, I'm trying to think what the colour would be, like a yellow ochre colour. So I might get a little touch of yellow ochre or raw sienna even. Now I might go yellow ochre. I'll go yellow ochre onto the bottom of his teeth. So get a bit of that on my palette and dilute it right down and just pop that onto his teeth because his teeth aren't white. And onto these little teeth in the middle. Then I'll go back around the inside of his teeth with the shadow tone. Now I'm going to get onto the leaves. And the leaves I'm going to start with sap green. So I'll just get some sap green on my brush. I'll clean out one of these little bays so you can see, two of these little bays. Pop my sap green in there. And we're going to start with the sap green onto these leaves. Got to stay away from that bit of grey there. That's still a bit damp. So I'll just come up and around like that. You can see it's diluted. I'll do this in a few layers. Come over this leaf. I'll do them all at once. Like that. I come into his mouth because you can see that that branch goes through his mouth. Take that over there. And then onto this, look, and take that leaf to the edge. Get a bit more sap green. A little bit more sap green on my palette. Like that. Whoops, you can see how strong that is. I need to add a little bit more water. Add a touch more water to that. There we go. So it flows a bit better onto the paper. Continue around and just fill in all of these leaves. Like that. And then the last leaf, come down here. Like that. All right. Cool, cool. I'll let that dry for a little bit, then I'll go back in with some stronger pigment. I'm going to go around the outside of him and I'm just going to use cobalt blue. I'm just going to create just a background. I think he needs a background, but I'll give him a blue background. So I'm going to wet my paper carefully, clean my brush and wet the paper. Whoops, you can see I've got dirty water, doesn't matter. I'll just go cut around the edge a little bit. I'll go down to the leaf. I won't quite go up to the branch. I'll leave a little gap. And this is an easy way of doing backgrounds. I'm just going to fill wet that page right around Mr. Panda. Going up to anywhere the water is where the paint will flow. And then I'll drop my cobalt blue in and it will flow all the way around to the edges like this. So you watch this, how it flows. And I'm using rough or medium rough watercolour paper. It's called cold press. And it's the, what am I using? It's a Bockingford. And it's really lovely. I'm really enjoying using it, I have to say. It's really nice to use. So I'm going to come around the edge of the bear. And go in a bit closer to his fur at the sides because it's just paper. And go almost up to that branch at the in his mouth. Just down there, like that. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. And I quite like that soft effect. The Senelia watercolor colours are super soft, delicate looking. So come all the way down here. Okay, now I can just pick up, clean my brush, take the excess moisture out and go around the edge of his head and pick up any puddles with the dry brush. I can actually drag that in a little bit closer to that little stem now. That's nearly dry. So pick up any puddles with a nice clean dry brush like that, because that's the pooling at the edge there. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go take the blue down onto, oh, I got that into my yellow ochre up there, so I'll just get some more cobalt blue. Oops, clean my brush, get some more cobalt, more water like that, and take it around the rest of the page, anywhere that I want the background. So I'm going to pop it down underneath him as well, take it right around the edge like that. And I'm going to have to let that dry a little bit. I'm going to drop that just in closer to that leaf and branch. A bit more blue in there. Excuse my dog in the background. He's barking at my hubby out the back. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone now. Let it dry in the edges. And I'm going to go back into the middle and I'm going to put in the transparent sienna or not transparent sienna. I might actually use a bit of Caput Mortem for the edges of his eyes. It's a lovely, lovely reddy brown. Oops, it's got to get a bit on my brush. Get it up here. Oops, doesn't want to play on the paper. All right, we'll use a different colour. We'll use quinacridone. No, I'll use burnt sienna. Use a little touch of burnt sienna. There we go. That's a nice brown for his iris. And I'm just going to take that, leaving a little bit of a highlight on the edge of his eye. Yeah, that's a lovely, lovely reddy brown for his iris. I've got to clean my brush again, get a bit more water on it because I lost the tip of it for a second. If your brush gets too dry, you can lose control of the edges of it, so I keep my damp brush quite wet. I'll leave a little sliver of light for the eye, the highlight, like that. And then I'm going to go back around the edge of his eye with a really strong mixture of that burnt umber cobalt blue to make a grey for the strong line around the edge of his iris. So you can see I've mixed that up with very little water. I will add some water to my brush just so it goes onto my brush okay. And I'm going to take that around the edge of his eye because he's got a strong dark line around the edge of his iris and the edge of his eye. Like that. Take that right round and around. I've got to get a bit more of that on there. Burnt umber cobalt blue. Get a bit more of that on there, like that. And I'm going to go around the top of his eye as well. Just keeping an eye. There we go. That's just strengthened that eye. And I'll do the same thing on this eye. Go around the outside of it, just to strengthen that. Like that. And go, whoops, take a bit of excess moisture out of the well there. I've got a bit too much water in there. So go cobalt blue, burnt umber, and I'm going to darken up. Now we're going on to final touches. So I'm going to darken up the darkest darks now. Okay, go into his ears, into the center of his ears, like that. Go into this area under the leaves, going the direction of the fur. Get a bit more moisture on my brush. Take that grey tone down there, like that. Coming around the back of this leaf, right up to the edge of it, like that. Pop in some fur texture, because he's got lots of fur. Like that. Come down his chest, like that. Popping in fur, just brush this little brush strokes in the direction, like that. Get a bit more on my brush. Got a bit too much water in there. Again, bit of burnt umber, bit more burnt umber, bit more cobalt blue. And I'm just going to take that around, again around his eyes, just to strengthen up some little fur brush marks, like that. Come in a bit closer to his eye, like that, down both sides, leaving little gaps between so you can still see the lighter tones underneath, like that. He's a very cute bear. He's a very cute bear. He's got a couple of long whiskers up here, so I'll just carefully drop in some whiskers, like that. I've got to go into his, I've got to green up the leaves. I'll let the body dry a little bit, and I've got to pop the shadow into, I've also got to pop some grey dots around his nose, because you can see he's got furry bits, a very tiny fine hair around his nose. So I'm just going to pop in a little bit of that grey pigment around there, going up onto his nose. Add a little bit around the edge of his cheeks there, or his nose to his cheeks, a little bit there. I'm going to darken up this bit coming into his mouth, like that. As you can see, it gets very dark in there, like that. And I'll add a little bit of a purple tone. I'm going to go a bit of dioxazine purple, like that, because it's a beautiful dark shadowy colour. Get a bit of that in there, and I'm going to pop that into his mouth and around his teeth for the shadow in his mouth, like that. And then I'm going to go back onto these leaves, and I'm going to add more sap green, but almost pure, like not a lot of water. And I'm going to go onto the darker areas of these leaves, like that. You can see that one's shadowed underneath from the top one, so I'll leave a little gap and go in there like that. Then this third one is quite shadowed, so come under here and fill that right in, taking the shadow not quite to the end. This one's got a fair bit of shadow just here, following the shape of the leaves. And that one's shadowed directly where it meets the other leaf. And then I'm going to get my fine brush and I'm going to draw in the lines, because these leaves have lines on them. And I've just got a really fine brush here. So I'm just going to go across with the sap green. Oops. Get a little bit more on my palette. And just pop in some lines going in the direction. Oops. Gonna need to get a bit of a wetter brush so that the paint travels. There we go, like that. Going in the direction of the leaf, like that. Continue round, on all the leaves. Down onto this bottom leaf. Come all the way around there. And then on the underside of this bamboo coming out of his mouth, the underside's nearly all in shadow. What's in his mouth is in shadow, so oops, put that green in there. Clean my brush, pick up that excess bit that I just got there, like that. And take it along the whole outside edge of that leaf. And he is looking pretty cute. I'm going to add a little bit more of it. I'm going to go a bit of burnt umber just around the edge of his eye, because he doesn't actually have the white in there. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of burnt umber in there to fill that in. And I'm going to go a super dark. This is one time where I'm going to use like a Payne's grey, and I'm going to go into the darkest dark on the inside of his nostrils. It's the only place that I'll use this Payne's grey. And I'll pop that into his nostrils. And the very darkest part of his nose, he's got the dark strip down there. And I might pop just a touch of it onto his ears, where his ears meet his head. And I reckon I am going to call that done. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love it if you click like and subscribe, click on the bell icon. That way you'll be notified when I release a new video, which I do most days. I'm actually having a blast making all these videos for you guys and step-by-step tutorials. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I'll just take off the edges so you can see what it looks like with the tape off. Again, I apologise for the background noise. I live on a farm and we've got animals and everything going on outside. I'll just take off the tape. Just pick up this bit. Whoops, that off there. Ooh, you can see it's picked up. That tape's a bit strong for this paper. So it's picking up a little bit of the edge of the paper, but it doesn't matter. It's only for me and just as an example to show you how to do stuff. And there we have it. One panda bear. So thank you for watching. Have an awesome day and I will see you next video. Okie doke. See you then.